Hello, I'm Robin Whalley, welcome to Lenscraft. Today we're going to be looking at what I believe are two of the most powerful sliders in Nik Silver Efex Pro, and I'm going to demonstrate with this image a counterintuitive way to use them to produce great results. We're going to start with this sunrise scene I captured on the beach at Bamburgh in Northumberland. The light was good, but the sky's just too heavy to make this a colour image. Instead, we're going to convert it to black and white and use it to demonstrate this counterintuitive approach with two very powerful sliders. When I first opened the image, the default neutral presets applied. Now most people open an image in Silver Efex Pro, they will use the global adjustment controls over on the right. Typically they start at the top and work their way down through the controls in sequence. My suggestion is that you start with one of the most powerful sliders, soft contrast. Now let's stop for a moment and look at the effects of using the normal contrast adjustment on our image. As I move the slider, watch what happens to the image and the histogram. When I move the slider to the left, the histogram becomes gathered into the centre. Notice also the image starts to look very flat because we're taking contrast out of the photo. Now look more closely at the histogram and you'll notice we've lost the black point and we've also lost the white point. There's no longer any areas of pure black or white in this image. If I now move the contrast slider to the right, you can see that we lose all the detail in the image. Most of the tones have now become either black or white and there's no graduation between them. Look at the histogram and you can see it's gathered now at either end. We don't have any midtones at all because they've become pushed to the black or white ends of the histogram. You can also see we've got some clipping being indicated by the red and green warning stripes at either end of the histogram. Let's reset the contrast and compare the results now with the soft contrast slider. When I move the soft contrast slider to the left, the histogram still becomes gathered into the centre. This time though, the effect isn't as severe. We still have tones that are near to the black and white ends of the histogram. The image also looks slightly different. Rather than appearing flat, it now looks more like bad HDR. That's because we've opened the shadows and reduced the highlight tones without severely affecting the black and white points. When we move the slider to the right, we can see that the histogram doesn't lose all the midtones as it did when we used the contrast slider. You can see that the dark tones in the image also appear softer. When you're making global adjustments in the Nik Silver Efex Pro, start with soft contrast slider. Decide, do you want to open the shadows, in which case you move the slider to the left. Alternatively, if you want to darken the image to emphasize atmosphere, move the slider to the right. When you've done this, you can use the other sliders in the contrast section to refine the image. I know this seems counterintuitive, but it does work. In this example I can see the sky is too light and needs to be darker, and the rocks are very dark and need to be lighter. Let's start by opening the shadows that are too dark. To do this we can use the Amplify White slider. This works on the shadow areas of the image and lightens them. Next we can darken the light areas of the image using the Amplify Black slider. Once we're happy with the adjustments, we might need to apply additional contrast using the standard contrast slider. After this, you may feel that you need to refine some of the sliders a little further. You can see this has already created a great image just by applying the sliders in the contrast section. The other powerful slider we need to use is the dynamic brightness slider. Watch what happens when I move the slider over to the right. You can see that it lightens the shadows and midtones, but hardly affects the highlights. When I move the slider to the left, we affect the midtones and move them over into the shadows. Neither of these adjustments is causing much clipping in the histogram. If you compare this now with the normal brightness slider, you can see that it affects the black and white points in the image. In our sample image, we can use the dynamic brightness slider to darken the scene without blocking up the shadow details. We can then use the other sliders in the brightness section to refine the image tones. As you can see, a few simple adjustments have created a significant improvement to the image. Now, there are times when you find areas of your image are becoming too dark or light, but you don't want to reduce the strength of the adjustments. If this happens, you can apply the tonality protection sliders to the shadows and highlights. Watch what happens to the histogram as I move the shadow protection to the right. It moves the darkest tones in the image to the right to protect the shadows and prevents them from becoming blocked up. Equally, the highlight slider helps you protect the lightest tones and stops them from blowing out to pure white. The only problem with the tonality protection slider is that they can leave the image looking a little flat. When this happens, you may need to target problem areas using control points. I hope today's tutorial has given you some new ideas about how to use the global adjustments in Nik Silver Efex Pro. If you want to know more about these and other controls, I'm releasing an updated version of my Nik Silver Efex book later in August 2018. I'm also currently giving away copies of my book, Lessons in Landscape Photography. If you're interested, I'll put the details in the information for this video below. I'm Whalley, you've been watching Lenscraft. I'll see you next week for another Bitesize Nik tutorial.